Thank you so much for being here. This is an audience of SAG actors.
Hey guys.
So I always like to start by asking actors how they got their SAG card.
Oh shit. Just before we go, has anybody? I think I've done this one time before. Are there any like repeat people here? And it's fine if not. That just means I can say all the old jokes and pretend like they just came to me
from other
in the
Q&As.
moment. Yeah.
Yes.
No, this is great. All right, so you're gonna get all the old bullshit. No, I got my SAG card from a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial in Chicago, and fuck yeah. And so, but also this was like kind of like I don't know. This was like 2000 and I think it was like 2003, and it was so obviously like way before Twitter or way before. But I remember that somebody emailed me and they had found a chat board, and I don't know where they had found this. But there was like some sort of, it was called the Wing Master, and it was like a guy who eats too many wings. And this is gonna be really gross, and I'm really sorry. And this is gonna be really gross. I'm not, no, shit, now I'm already in the fucking hole of telling this awful story. So there was a rumor that this commercial was subversively about oral sex, male to female oral sex. And there was like a real big, I mean, like this is really disgusting, and I'm so sorry that I started telling the story, but specifically during menstruation. Again, I'm really sorry. I don't know why I'm telling a story. I wish that it could stop. But I feel like I got to a certain point at which I could not turn around from it. So here we are, and that was how I got my SAG card.
So wait, a friend sent you this? They saw it on a message board?
Yeah, and they were like, hey, dude, and there were like 30 replies being like, I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Had it ever occurred to you, or were you like, that is insane?
No, no. It's just a guy who eats wings. Anyway.
Well, you mentioned Chicago.
It was a barbecue sauce thing. I don't know why I am bringing this. I don't know why I am returning to this. You gave me an out.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. All right.
You mentioned Chicago. I know that's where you did a lot of theater there. Did you grow up in the area?
I didn't grow up. I grew up in Maine, and then after college, I moved to Chicago, yeah.
And why Chicago?
Because of the theater scene there, it just seemed like they were creating plays there, that like there were just little theater companies that created something new that you hadn't seen before, and that it was like, you know, kind of like a roll up your sleeves and do it kind of attitude. And I just really liked that. I liked indie theater. I liked storefront theater. I liked stuff that was weird. And so that seemed to be like a good place to go. Also, it just seemed like from the friends of mine, I had some friends from undergraduate school that had moved there. It seemed like a place where you could get going quickly. It was just like off the plane, you'll be auditioning for plays like within a couple weeks if you want to. And if you don't, you just start a theater company. So that was like, so that's why. Yeah.
That was the vibe. Is that how it happened for you?
Yeah, like I got there, and I mean, like it was sort of. I mean, like not with a lot of success, or at least like, I mean, like I think like the first show that I ever did there, I think like after 2 months of rehearsal and 3 months of running the show, they were like, "Hey, you guys did a great job," and like they cut us all a check for $25. And we were like, this was like a win. Yeah. That was a win. So certainly not like financially, but like as far as like community and like ensemble building and stuff like that, it was amazing. Yeah.
Was that the kind of career you were envisioning for yourself? Mainly theater? Did you always want to do film and TV?
I didn't really. I assumed that I would just kind of go through theaters and like do that, like, you know, kind of hit around from regional theater to regional theater. But I always liked movies. Some people that work in theater, especially in Chicago, that's the only thing that matters. And I was always kind of somebody that was like, I don't know, I liked movies. So I kind of wanted to do that too. And so that's why after I think I was there for like 6 years, I moved to LA.
Oh, so there wasn't something that brought you to LA? You chose?
No, I moved to LA. I moved to LA dumb. I did the dumb way. I don't like. Does everybody live here? Mostly. Everybody tells you they tell you the thing, especially coming from Chicago, which hates LA. Yeah, there you go. They will say like, don't, like, you have to move with a job. You have to have a connection with an agency. you need something that brings you out there, otherwise you're going to get lost, or I don't know, whatever they would say, which was dumb. And I'm sort of a contrarian fucker and always have been, and I just decided that I moved here sight unseen. I had never even set foot in Los Angeles before. So as we were like driving a U-Haul into town, I was like, oh, that's what Los Angeles looks like. And I didn't even have a connection to, like, I had a bad agent in Chicago who like wouldn't even put in a call to it. Yeah, they're all, there you go. I think we might have a conversation. You're gonna come up here and we're gonna talk about this.
Actually, that's the agent.
Oh, okay. I didn't appreciate your work. No, who wouldn't even put in a call to like a commercial agent for me out here. Like after like 5 years, he like wouldn't even put in a call to like a bad commercial agency. And so I had absolutely no connections of any kind out here when I moved. I was just like, I ultimately just wanted to work in film and television or commercially or whatever, but just on camera. And obviously like, this is just where you do that.
And how long did it take you before you booked the first job in front of the camera?
My first job in front of to take your question literally, I think maybe like 6 months in, I got a job where I think I got paid $125 to work at the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 30th anniversary party, where there was like a live photo booth, and the whole idea was that it was like you got to go to this party, so you got to get your picture taken on the yellow carpet, and the yellow carpet had in the picture that you got, there were paparazzi taking your picture on the yellow carpet, and I was one of the people that was a paparazzi, so I was technically on camera in those pictures. But I was a human prop. And so to answer quite literally, that was the question. I hope I've gained your trust back since that first story. I really went off the rails with that, and I'm very sorry.
What year was this, just out of curiosity?
I moved here in 2008. And I think that was probably in 2000. That might have been like the following Halloween.
Because I swear to God, I was at that party.
Were you there? It was in
I
that
really
hangar.
think
was
I was.
It in the hangar?
The hangar in Santa Monica?
In the Santa Monica Airport.
Yeah.
Did you get your picture taken at that photo booth?
I did. I'm sure I have it somewhere. I'm a huge Simpsons fan. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it just Homer? That's really nice.
You want me to
go
put the whole
back and
family
look
on
at
there?
that photo.
I will. You might
and
be
you're
in
gonna
it?
you very well might see me in it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, please do. And if you do, send it to me. As proof. Okay. The Lisa Simpson, whoever was in the Lisa Simpson costume, was touching me inappropriately. And I don't, but it was just like it, but it was a constant thing, because not only were you there getting your picture taken on the yellow carpet, they would rotate character costumes from the show in, and I was right here and Lisa Simpson was right here, and constantly, just sort of like on the back, but then like a little bit too low. Find out who was in the Lisa's, because I'm going to file a claim.
She never took. She never took her head off. You never saw her.
No. Or him,
yeah,
or whatever. I mean, it could have been anybody. It could have been anybody. It could have been Matt Groening. Like, I don't know. But so then I started session directing, like running camera and session directing for commercial casting companies. And so through that, I ended up finding a commercial agent and then just like doing a bunch of commercials. So somewhere in 2010, I think sort of like early part of 2010, I think I booked my first job in LA, like in a Best Buy commercial or something like that, and then had sort of like a run of good luck with that, and that was fine. It was like the first time that my wife and I were able to breathe a little bit, like after that first. So like we moved here in July of 2008, and then I don't know if you remember July of 2008, but all the money caught on fire. In 2008, I don't know if you remember that. It was terrible, but jobs were really hard to find, and so like we were spending $40 a week on groceries, and like just like we had no money. And so this was the first time that we were able to like breathe a little bit, and just like kind of be like, okay, we're settled. Like we're not so like not only month to month, but not just day to day, and And then at the end of that year was when I auditioned for the show. And so even though I had auditioned for waiters on TV jobs, but I had never managed to get those parts. And so when I went in for Veep, that was like the first big television job that I had gotten.
And you got it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you did. You're here tonight.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, well, I was kind of curious about that because looking, at IMDb, I don't usually you see like a lot of guest star credits before something like this. But were they maybe looking for somebody new, or what do you think happened?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't necessarily know that they were looking for somebody new. Allison Jones was the one who cast it, and she's very good. I mean, like, I know for a fact that they brought in people that you would definitely recognize. I don't necessarily think they were looking for somebody new. I think it was just that Armando and HBO just didn't particularly care if it was or wasn't. And like, if you look at the part at that time, I don't think anybody would really care if like a named person was in that part. Like, it was kind of in and out. It was kind of about the core team. And then I would come in as the representation of the White House and just be like, here, deal with this. And then they would have their whole episode of dealing with it. And I would come in at the end and be like, you guys did a bad job. That was sort of what I did. So I don't think it was I think it was kind of like, I think it was a part where it didn't need to be somebody who had a bunch of credits or was famous or anything. Yeah.
I was actually trying to remember back in the first season if Jonah was as heinous as he became, if that was always the plan or it sort of developed. Maybe as they got to know you, I don't know.
I think more as they got to know me. I mean, Jesus Christ, I brought up a menstruation in the first 30 fucking seconds of this, so I can't imagine what I did then. No, I think that he was always pretty heinous.
Yeah.
He was always pretty heinous. I mean, he does, in the very first episode, he does blackmail a woman into going on a date with him. And so it might not have the same sort of vile language that you sort of become used to with him, but I think he was pretty heinous since the beginning. One nice thing is I think he's been consistent in that, like, all he cares about is his proximity to other people's power. And I think that was there from the beginning.
Which is so evident in this episode they just showed, where he's just trying to get into the unveiling of the portrait. Yeah.
He doesn't even know what it is. Doesn't even know what an unveiling is, and he just understands that he should be invited to it. One should be invited to this, yet I am not.
Was he? I don't want to say based on anyone you knew, but did you maybe draw from someone?
Not anyone particular. I think we did like a lot of research in the lead up to like the pilot and all that. We talked to a lot of people that worked in DC because we shot in Baltimore, and so we were close to DC. We would take the train up and we would get staffers drunk, and it was great. Because one thing that we always loved is on the first drink, they would tell you these sort of like grand ideas of what their job would be, like how they're going to change the world and how their congressperson is going to do whatever. And then by the third drink, that's when you would actually get the truth of how much they hated it and how much they're like, our congressman's an idiot, or like these really depressing things. Like, I remember somebody told me once that like they were a communications director of a congresswoman, and they said, my job is never to get my candidate's message out. Like, not anymore. The only thing that you can do as a communications director now is try to mess up your opponent's day. Like, that's all you can really do now. So that was depressing. But as far as basing it on anybody, I didn't. I think I tried to take all the little bits, all the worst bits that you would hear from stories that everybody had, and try to put those characteristics into him, and then just sort of like in some weird way, like sort of heighten those terrible things that exist inside of me. I just tried to heighten those. But they did, like when they wrote it, they did base it on one guy who worked in the Obama administration that they met up with, and they never told me. But can you imagine?
Does he know this person?
I don't think he knows. I mean, I think he knows. Yeah. But like, I don't think he's like out there saying it.
Sure.
Have you ever heard of that thing where if you want to write a character and you want to make sure, like, it's definitely going to be based on somebody, but you want to make sure, like a dude, and you want to make sure that dude doesn't sue you? There's an actual name for this, and please, if anybody knows it, shout it out. but that you just make sure that you write that the character has a small penis. And that way, the person who it is clearly based on will never sue you. And there was one dude that actually did. This one guy that was like, yeah, that's me. And so anyway, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is that this guy probably knows like that this was but he's not going to be like, yep, that's me.
Well, I also feel like somebody like Jonah might not be self-aware enough to know, so it's possible.
No, this guy's definitely self-aware enough.
Okay.
I did ultimately find out who it was.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, yeah, he's got to. I mean, he's got to.
It's not Joe Biden, is it? Of course, right.
God, I wish I could be based on Joe Biden.
That would be amazing.
That would be great.
Oh,
no, his son, we had a season, like we had a premiere in D.C. for the first season. We had one in New York. We had like a screening in New York and one in D.C. the next day. And Joe Biden's son came to the screening. And we met him briefly, but this was a long time ago. I can't remember which kid. But
you remember which son?
I can't remember which son. I don't know, like one of the, I don't know. Does one of them start with a B? Buck Biden? Bo. It was Bo Biden. Maybe? Now I don't know. Now I'm questioning it. Bo Biden was there, and I really do think that this is what I'm making up, that basically everybody in the Biden camp was like, somebody's fucking going there and telling us if this show is about Joe Biden in some weird way, which it clearly wasn't, but but like Biden couldn't show up without knowing what it was. So anyway.
Was this in the early days before they knew what the show was, or?
Yeah, this was like the pilot.
So
like
they wanted to make sure it wasn't,
Yeah.
Selina's not based on Joe Biden. I think we can say that safely.
Yeah, I think safely you can say that.
So were you someone who like followed politics, or was a wonk at all, or?
I was wonkish. Like I liked keeping up with it, but I do think the experience of the being on the show and being able to just be around, like Frank Rich is one of our executive producers, and just being around somebody like that who's so incredibly smart and has been writing about politics for years, you kind of realize very quickly, like, oh, I didn't know anything about this. And so I do feel like, even as somebody that followed a little bit, I was mostly just following like the partisan sides of it, the stuff that I agreed with. I mean, which we all kind of do. But I feel like it's given me like a little bit of I mean, like I still have I'm very set in my ways or whatever, but, or I still have my own personal opinions, but like I do kind of see, I think I see when my own party is trying to spin me on something a little bit better than I had before. But so I was always into it, but now I think I know a little bit more about it.
And I mean, working with this cast, starting with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but the whole cast is so flawless. And this, like we said, you were pretty new to TV. Were you ever intimidated or scared or convinced you'd be fired?
All of them. All of them immediately. No, like I was at, when I moved out here, I trained at UCB. And so you have like one of the 4 people that created UCB. And this is not a joke. I think that I have seen every single episode of Arrested Development at minimum 35 times. And so, like, to this day, Tony Hale is still my mom's favorite character on the show. Like, my mom loves Tony Hale. My mom's a big Arrested Development fan, as am I. And, like, Tony's her favorite actor on the show. No, and then obviously Julia. I was in, and then Armando, like, I had gone through as soon as I got cast. I sort of went through and mainlined everything that Armando had done from the UK. I think before I auditioned or during that process at some point to get a sense of style, I suppose I watched In the Loop, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is everything I have ever wanted to do in anything. And so I was sort of in awe of him as well. And so it was super nerve-wracking, but this kind of thing comes from the top down. And so this is credit to Armando and credit to Julia that, like, it didn't matter when we were in there. It was an open room. It was very, you were given agency to be a part of it rather than being somebody that's like, well, you're new, so just sit over there. You were given full access to the process. And I think that was also part of the fact that we had this weird rehearsal process that was part of, that's kind of Armando's thing. And so we were just in the rehearsal room for like, I think 6 days before we shot the pilot. So by the time we actually started rolling, I even though I was incredibly nervous and did definitely think I was gonna, like the first morning, first take when that was done, I was like, that was garbage and you're getting fired. I did still feel very comfortable with them.
There's a question from Alice Prime, who has the nicest handwriting I've ever seen.
Oh, can I see?
Yeah, isn't that nice? It looks like a font.
Yeah, it's really good. That's really good.
Wants to know how much of the show is scripted and how much do you improv?
It is, I would say like 90% scripted, 10% improvised in what you actually see. And the rehearsal process was such that like we would do a table read and then we would put scripts to the side, and then we would sort of like work around the ideas of the scene, or if we found something new, we would chase that idea. Or sometimes we would pitch jokes from the seats, or sometimes you just get thrown into a scene that you weren't in the rehearsal room, and then they would go away, and then they would script that out, and we would write, and then we would do like a table read of that. And then we would do the same sort of thing. Arm always talked about it being like a soup. You just put a bunch of ingredients in and you boil it down. You put more ingredients in, you boil it down. And so ultimately when we got to set, it was always pretty tightly scripted, but then they always gave us, it was less, at the time it was less one for fun and more just do the entire scene, hit the major beats, but don't stay faithful to the words that were scripted. So it was more like improvising like a short play around those ideas. And the idea was just get something natural, get something that felt off the cuff, or get a reaction that you hadn't had because you were hearing something new. Pardon me. This tea is making me gassy. I'm just a real charmer. That's going to be everybody's takeaway from tonight. Wow, just so effortless and charming. Goddamn. So I think that ultimately it ends up not being very heavily improvised, but there are elements of improv that informed it, if that makes sense.
Is there more than one table read?
No, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
We used to. Now we've had a showrunner change in between seasons 4 and 5, and that's he has a whole style all his own. But when it was when Armando was running it, we would read episode 4 and then we would rehearse some of it, and then same day after lunch we might read episode 5 and then rehearse some of that, and then the next day the writers would have gone home and worked on something, and we would have read a new draft the next morning, and then we would rehearse that, and they go. So like, it doesn't really happen anymore, but when we were in Baltimore, we would do probably 2 to 3 table reads of each one. But that was all sort of under the umbrella of rehearsal.
And I know Jonah is obviously, well, kind of a fictional character, but do any of the insults ever get to you personally?
There have been a couple.
Oh.
Yeah, man. Like sometimes they're just saying some shit about your face, and it's like, man, that's just my face. You know, like there was one that like, I mean, this all came down. I think this came from like when I was in middle school. Like, I don't know, I'm tall. I probably grew out of I was probably a nightmare to my mom. It's probably why Tony Fallon's her favorite actor on the show. That like I probably grew out of clothes really quick, you know, and she was probably just buying like $3 jeans from Rennie's, and like she probably just didn't look and grabbed like a pair of women's jeans, and then I had to wear them to school, and like, yeah, they looked like a little hippie. And and then some kids, like now my lifelong friends, made fun of me, said that I had woman hips. And of course, this shit stays with you. I'm a fucking adult ass man now, and I have children. I have my own children. And then they like made a joke in like the scene where Jonah hooks up with Shawnee. They made a joke. They were like, it was like, was it weird that I only had one testicle? And she was like, no, it was really your hips. And I was like, oh God. Oh. Did they know? Did they talk to my friends? Did they know that this is the fucking thing that's really gonna stick it in there?
Oh man.
So there was that one. I just revealed something about myself to you. I honestly don't even think my family or my mom knows that. I'm gonna talk to her. And then one time they told me like, they'll come in and they'll look you up and down and then they'll go away, and then they'll come back in with an alt insult. And you're like, I know you didn't base that off the character. You based that off of what you just saw with your eyes. So like there are a couple that sneak through the cracks, but mostly I think everybody just lets it, they just let it ping off like the characters do. Like the insults never stun anybody on that show. It never stops anybody from just plowing right through to get to what they want.
Do you have a personal favorite?
Oh fuck! I think it's honestly, I really love in the Jonahs files. I was a really big fan of the Cloud Botherer. I just think that's great.
A good one.
The Cloud Botherer, and then last year, this was also one that hurt a little bit. Was there's a scene where they're not workshopping, but they're doing a focus group on one of his campaign commercials, and somebody just sort of contemplates it for a second and says, "He's just the wrong shape." And like the sort of like the generality of that is just like fucking all of it, like none of it works. And so like that one hit a little bit, but like after a certain point, like we were talking about it backstage, like after a certain point, like the tall jokes, just like that's fine. I've been dealing with that for a while. Like I'm tall, you know. What are you gonna do?
I'd never heard Cloud Botherer. That's a good one.
Cloud Botherer is like I like that one just because it's like usually they're so barbed and they're so pointed and they're so disgusting that this one it just lends itself to like it's like annoyance.
Yeah.
Just like ugh.
Or like Horse Whisperer, Cloud Botherer.
Yeah, Cloud Botherer.
It's almost sweet.
He's just up there, just making people just upset.
So what has been your biggest challenge on the show? I mean, your hair alone this season has had its own arc, so.
I had to shave my head. If anybody is not caught up, I have to shave my head at the beginning of the season because I wasn't faking having cancer. I was faking having cancer for longer than I actually had cancer in order to get hand jobs. And so I had to fully shave my head. Do you not know that?
The character.
Yeah, no, that's for real.
Specify
the character.
Jonah, yes.
I almost just made another bad joke. I don't know.
Just lean into it at
God,
this point.
just people are just going to start getting up and walking out. What was the question? The hair. Oh, the hair. I had to get. I had to shave my head, and that wasn't that hard. Only because it was like I don't know, it'll be fun, and I did think to myself like if I. This isn't funny. Again, I'm revealing more stuff to you guys than I do to my actual family. I was like, if I have to shave my head and I have a really funny looking head, it'll be funny. If I shave my head and it just looks normal, it'll also be funny, but maybe not as funny. But there was a little part of me that was worried that like everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be so funny. Tim's gonna shave his head for the show. Oh, that's gonna be great. And then they were gonna shave my head, and it was just gonna be straight up clear. I had a brain tumor, like that. They were just gonna shave it, and there would just be like a lump, and then it was all gonna go quiet. And then they were like, you have 3 months, you know. I know that's not how brain tumors work, but I'm just saying there's like a base level anxiety, just sort of about things like that. So anyway, that was hard. Other things is just it all changes so much that like you are sometimes just handed, like when we were in Baltimore, sometimes you just get 12 new pages as you're walking to set, and then you do your best. But we have a good ensemble, so. If you like, we never felt like it was insurmountable. We always thought like, well, fuck, you just got 12 new pages to learn, and we're about to roll on it. Somebody's gonna pick it up. Somebody like, if you forget what you're supposed to say, either you're just gonna be able to improvise your way back into it, or somebody's gonna remember what you were supposed to say and just pimp you into it. So that's tough, but it's like a fun tough, you know, like it's like a fun bad thing. Or a fun hard thing. So I don't know. So I was always kind of okay with it.
So you really had to shave your head, and then you had to live as a bald man for a little bit of time. What was that like? I actually really liked it. I had a beard when we shaved my head. It was the only time I've ever looked intimidating. For like 1 second before we shaved the beard and I had a shaved head, I had a shaved head and a beard. I was like, well, you look like an intimidating person. But I opened my mouth and it all went away. But like for that moment, it was cool. It was cool. I actually liked it. Like in the first episode, they did such a good job with the makeup on my head that everybody thought it was a bald cap, and I was worried that I was not. And this is the only thing that matters.
get credit for shaving your head.
Yep.
Get credit. Stomp on all your other actor friends. Step over their corpses to get credit for shaving your head. That is like that. I'm overplaying that. But no, I was like, oh man, but I think it was less the actual shaving and more like I wore a hat. Like we didn't want to like have it get out at all. So like I avoided cameras for 5 months. I wore hats everywhere. Like if my wife was going to take a picture of the family, like to put on Facebook, I would wear a hat during that. And then when it came out, people were like, "Oh, that's a bald cap." I was like, "Oh, come on, man." But no, I feel like when I shaved it, my wife was like, "Oh, honey, it looks good." No, I really like it. And then 3 weeks later, when it had grown in like just a little bit, she was like, "No, this actually, like, this is better. This is." So she just lied to me, like right at the beginning. She lied.
Did it naturally grow into that like Eddie Munster pattern, or?
It did, yeah. That's just my hair.
So they didn't write that in.
No. Wow. I just have a really like fucked up widow's peak that goes like 8 inches, but it's been that way like since I am not going bald. Like this is not like the lady doth protest too much. Like I just like it's been that way since I was a child. It's just always been way like back here.
Did you have any idea until it started growing in?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have a question from Rachel. Wants to know, as real life politics have become more of a farce, do you approach your working character differently?
That is a very good question. The answer, the answer is no, because we were lucky for a couple things. We were lucky that we were far enough into the. I'm sorry. There were two things, and I'm going to give you the second one first. First one is that we live in this, the show lives in this alternate universe where the most recent political figure that we've referenced is Ronald Reagan, so we don't have to deal with it directly. We can deal with like if this is the thing that everybody fucking hates, then we can deal with all this stuff, and that can make it into the show. But we never had to deal with this thing that everybody fucking hates. And so the other thing is that we've been doing it long enough that I feel like we can get away a little bit with, it doesn't necessarily have to be about politics, especially this season, it being about the post-presidency and that sort of thing. Like it doesn't have to be about politics, and people can kind of come and find some solace in idiot characters and what they are going through. Like the familiarity with the characters, I think, meant that we didn't have to hit it very hard. And so it didn't change the prep. Like we've been doing it long enough that we kind of know what these people will do in any particular situation. But yeah.
And you shot it before the real life election.
Three episodes.
Really?
3 episodes were finished before you know.
The apocalypse.
Yeah.
What was it like coming back to work that day?
It was fucking awful. Yeah. We ended up having a hiatus for a couple weeks, and I think everybody. It was a planned hiatus. I think for Thanksgiving. It would have been around Thanksgiving. I think basically we like took 2 or 3 extra days. We were gonna like shoot 2 or 3 days, but then that happened, and we just said, well, fuck it. We're just gonna pick it back up after Thanksgiving, so everybody could have these larger conversations about what it meant. But I went into the writer's room a couple days later to do like chemistry reads with people that auditioned for Shawnee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the writer's room, it was like a funeral in there. Yeah. It's the only way I can describe it. It's just, but I mean, I feel like it was kind of that way. I mean, if you live in a place that's progressive at all, it was kind of like that all around.
And I'm sure it's almost impossible to pick, but do you have a favorite scene partner? There's so many amazing actors on the show.
I mean, yeah, I've always loved the sort of like the long running 2-man rivalry with Dan and Jonah that like goes back to like going to that metal club in the first season. Because I do think that they are two sides of the same coin. I love that like Jonah thinks that he's a Dan. He thinks that he's attractive and a go-getter and charming. I love that he thinks that about himself. And I also love that how much it burns Dan that I essentially have the career in politics that he assumed for himself. So I just love that we've always returned to that those two people hating each other, but not really being able to get away from one another. And then just everything that I do with Sam Richardson, who's one of the funniest men on the planet. And I just think that it's funny, not only like do we have sort of like a Bert and Ernie thing, but it's just that like he has that character has this buoyant positivity that sort of offsets Jonah's like acidic negativity, and like and also it's just awesome hanging around with Sam. Yeah. Like so, yeah.
So Jonah is Bert in this metaphor, just making sure.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And you guys were recently picked up for another season.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
What would you like to see happen to Jonah in that season?
Well, I honestly, every time I've ever had a thought about what should happen to the characters, they've always done. It's always been whatever they've come up with has always been way better than whatever I guessed that where it might go, and we have really fucking funny writers, and really funny and talented directors, and Dave Mandel, who's running the show now, is incredible. So like honestly, like wherever they want it to go, like they're really good at it. So I try not to intervene.
So before you go back to shooting, which I guess will be almost in the winter or maybe late
Yeah,
fall.
we'll go back October-ish, like September, October-ish.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want to tell us about?
Things that might feel like there are some things like it's like fantastic that I get to like I'm attached to a couple things that very well. This was a big learning curve for me about like doing movies and stuff in the off seasons, which has been great. Like it's been very lucky that we have these long off seasons and I've been able to get gigs in those breaks. Like there are some things that might happen, but like indie film financing, it turns out, is a horror show.
Yeah.
And nearly impossible to get. So like I very well might be super busy, and I very well might do fuck all until we go back. So I don't know. I hope that it's the first one, but I don't know, and so I don't know. I guess I'm gonna fucking hang out with my kids, or I don't know.
Oh no, not that.
I know. You're right. I'll hire a babysitter. You're right. That's a better idea.
Well, again, I want to congratulate you on just really the funniest show on TV.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank
you,
guys.
and thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming on a Tuesday night. And I'm sorry that I started out with the menstruation story, but thank you.